Jake Morrison felt the cold metal against his skin as consciousness slowly returned to his body. The cryogenic chamber hissed and opened with a mechanical whir that echoed through the silent corridors of the New Horizon. His muscles ached from 3 centuries of frozen sleep, and his throat felt like sandpaper as he tried to speak. Around him, other pods began to activate automatically, their occupants stirring from the longest sleep in human history. Lisa Hayes emerged from the pod next to his, her auburn hair matted against her pale face. She had been his second in command when they fled Earth, and seeing her alive brought Jake a moment of relief in the confusion. Sam Tucker crawled out of his chamber across the room, the burly engineer already checking diagnostic panels even as he shook off the effects of long sleep. These 3 had volunteered to wake first, to assess their situation and prepare for what came next. The ship felt different somehow, older and worn despite the advanced systems that had kept them alive. Jake pulled himself to his feet and walked to the nearest viewport, his legs unsteady after centuries of disuse. What he saw outside made his heart sink. They floated in empty space, far from any star or recognizable constellation. The familiar patterns of human space were nowhere to be seen. They had drifted much farther than anyone had calculated. Atlas, the ship's artificial intelligence, activated as soon as it detected their movement. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a blue-tinted figure that had guided humanity through its darkest hour. The AI had continued working while they slept, maintaining the ship and monitoring their course through the void beyond the galaxy. What it told them next would change everything they thought they knew about their exile. The biological weapon that had threatened to destroy all human life was not a natural plague or an accident of war. It had been carefully designed by a coalition of alien species who feared humanity's rapid expansion across the galaxy. The Zephyrians, Thrakari, and others had watched humans colonize world after world, adapt to any environment, and solve problems that had stumped alien civilizations for millennia. Their fear had turned to hatred, and their hatred had nearly led to genocide. Jake listened to Atlas explain how humanity's evacuation had been their only choice for survival. The alien coalition had expected humans to die in the cold depths of space, but they had underestimated human determination and ingenuity. While the survivors slept, automated systems had continued to advance human technology, building new weapons, ships, and tools that surpassed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Lisa worked at a communications console, scanning frequencies for any sign of galactic civilization. What she found disturbed her greatly. The signals coming from their former territory told a story of decline and chaos. Trade routes that had once been protected by human-built defense platforms were now plagued by pirates. Colonies that had thrived under human administration were failing as alien governors proved unable to maintain the complex systems humans had built. The great terraforming projects that had turned barren worlds into garden paradises were breaking down without human engineers to maintain them. Space stations that had served as centers of commerce and culture for multiple species were being abandoned as their systems failed. The galaxy that had cast out humanity was crumbling without the very people they had tried to destroy. Sam Tucker brought more disturbing news from the engineering sections. The ship's long-range sensors had detected massive graveyards of derelict vessels drifting through former human space. These were not just human ships destroyed in battle, but alien vessels that had apparently been abandoned when their crews could no longer maintain them. It seemed that in driving out humanity, the alien coalition had also destroyed much of the knowledge and infrastructure that kept galactic civilization functioning. Jake found himself facing an impossible decision. They had 50,000 humans in cryogenic sleep, the last remnant of a species that had once numbered in the billions. They could continue drifting in the void, perhaps find some distant world where they could start over in isolation, or they could return to the galaxy that had cast them out, not as refugees begging for mercy, but as the rightful inheritors of the worlds they had built and the civilization they had helped create. The more Jake learned about the current state of galactic affairs, the more his anger grew. The aliens had not just tried to murder his species. They had destroyed everything humans had worked to build. Magnificent cities lay in ruins. Technological marvels had been reduced to scrap, and entire worlds were reverting to wasteland without human care. The galaxy was paying the price for its fear and hatred. Lisa discovered something that made Jake's blood boil. Hidden in the communication intercepts were reports of human settlements that had somehow survived the purge. Small communities of humans were living in hiding throughout former human space, treated as slaves or second-class citizens by the very aliens who had stolen their worlds. These survivors had kept human culture alive in secret, passing down stories and knowledge from parents to children for 300 years. Atlas presented Jake with detailed intelligence about galactic defenses, political divisions, and technological capabilities. The alien coalition that had once seemed so powerful was now fragmented and weak. The Thrakari were dealing with rebellions in their outer territories. The Zephyrians were struggling to maintain order, as their rigid command structure proved inadequate for governing diverse populations. The other species were too focused on their own problems to present a united front. Jake made his decision as he stood looking out at the stars that had once belonged to humanity. They would not slink back to the galaxy as beggars seeking scraps. They would return as conquerors, reclaiming what had been stolen and making the aliens pay for their crimes. The exile had made humanity stronger, and the galaxy was about to learn just how dangerous humans could be when they had nothing left to lose. He ordered the systematic awakening of key personnel throughout the ship. Military commanders, scientists, engineers, and pilots began emerging from their long sleep to find a very different situation than the one they had left behind. Jake addressed them all through the ship's communication system, his voice carrying both fury and determination. Humanity had been cast out, but they had survived and grown strong in the darkness. Now it was time to return home and show the galaxy what humans were truly capable of when they fought for their very existence. 6 months had passed since Jake Morrison first opened his eyes in the cold depths of space, and the New Horizon had transformed from a refugee ship into the flagship of humanity's return. The massive vessel now hummed with activity, as thousands of humans emerged from their long sleep to find a galaxy very different from the one they remembered. Jake had taken the title of Admiral, not through any formal ceremony, but because someone needed to lead and his people trusted him to bring them home. Dr. Rachel Stone worked tirelessly in the medical bays, overseeing the complex process of bringing humans back from cryogenic sleep. Each awakening required careful monitoring to prevent the cellular damage that could result from improper revival procedures. Her teams had perfected techniques that the original designers of the sleep pods had never imagined, reducing recovery time and eliminating many of the side effects that had plagued early space travelers. General Pete Collins organized the military personnel into fighting units that bore little resemblance to the forces that had fled Earth 3 centuries earlier. The automated systems had not been idle during humanity's exile, developing new weapons, armor, and tactics based on advanced combat simulations. Collins found himself commanding soldiers equipped with technology that made them individually more powerful than entire alien platoons. Lieutenant Amy Clark demonstrated the new stealth technology that had been perfected during their journey through the void. Human ships could now become virtually invisible to alien sensors, appearing as nothing more than background radiation or space debris. The technology worked by bending electromagnetic waves around the vessel's hull, creating a bubble of distorted space that confused even the most sophisticated detection systems. Engineer Carlos Martinez supervised the installation of improved fusion drives throughout the fleet. The new engines produced twice the thrust of their predecessors while consuming half the fuel, giving human vessels unprecedented speed and maneuverability. More importantly, the drives operated almost silently, making it nearly impossible for alien forces to detect approaching human ships until it was far too late to mount an effective defense. The first reconnaissance mission launched under Commander Nick Price and pilot Helen Shaw, 2 of humanity's most experienced deep space operators. Their stealth ship, barely larger than a fighter craft, slipped through the galactic barrier undetected and began gathering intelligence on their former territories. What they discovered exceeded even their worst fears about the state of galactic civilization. New Terra, once humanity's crown jewel colony, had become a shadow of its former glory. The magnificent crystal cities that human architects had designed to work in harmony with the planet's natural beauty were crumbling as alien engineers proved incapable of maintaining the complex environmental systems. Parks and gardens that had taken decades to establish were reverting to wilderness, while the orbital platforms that had made the planet a center of interstellar commerce drifted empty and abandoned. Price and Shaw made contact with the underground human communities that had somehow survived 3 centuries of alien rule. These hidden populations lived in the abandoned sections of human cities, in forgotten mining tunnels, and in wilderness areas too harsh for alien colonists. They had preserved human culture, technology, and most importantly, the burning desire for freedom that defined their species. Tom Bradley led one of the largest resistance cells, a group of nearly 1,000 humans who had turned the ruins of New Geneva into a secret fortress. His people had spent generations studying alien weaknesses, mapping defense installations, and preparing for the day when humanity would return to reclaim their birthright. They welcomed Price and Shaw as liberators, sharing intelligence that would prove invaluable in the coming campaign. Kate Williams had become something of a legend among the hidden human communities. A brilliant scientist who had inherited her knowledge from parents who had lived through the original Exodus, she had managed to reconstruct much of humanity's lost technological base using salvaged alien equipment. Her workshops produced weapons, communication devices, and other tools that kept the resistance movements connected across multiple star systems. The reconnaissance team learned that alien civilization was far more fragile than anyone had imagined. The various species had never truly understood the technology they had inherited from human colonies. They could operate the machines and systems that humans had built, but they lacked the innovative thinking necessary to improve or even properly maintain them. As a result, the galaxy's technological base was slowly collapsing. Admiral Morrison received detailed reports about galactic defenses, political divisions, and technological capabilities that painted a picture of opportunity and vulnerability. The Thrakari Empire was dealing with massive rebellions in its outer colonies, sparked by their brutal treatment of subject populations. The aquatic Nereids had lost contact with entire star systems as their communication networks failed. The insectoid Klaxons were facing a plague that their outdated medical technology could not cure. More importantly, the various alien species had grown complacent during 3 centuries of unchallenged dominance. Their military forces were designed to fight other aliens using predictable tactics and conventional strategies. None of them had prepared for the return of humanity with technology and techniques that had evolved far beyond anything the galaxy remembered. The intelligence gathered by Price and Shaw revealed that the alien coalition that had once seemed so formidable was now held together by nothing more than fear and habit. The Zephyrian Council maintained nominal leadership of the Galactic Confederation, but their authority was increasingly questioned by species that saw little benefit from the alliance. Several worlds had already declared independence, though none had the military strength to defend themselves against retaliation. Admiral Morrison called together his senior staff to plan humanity's return to galactic civilization. They would not announce themselves with diplomatic messages or peace overtures. The aliens had forfeited any right to mercy when they attempted genocide against the human species. Instead, humanity would return as their ancestors had always done, as conquerors who took what they wanted and held it against all comers. The first target would be New Terra, both for its strategic importance and its symbolic value. The planet had been humanity's greatest achievement before the exile, a testament to human ingenuity and determination. Reclaiming it would send a clear message to the galaxy. Humanity had returned, and they would not be denied what was rightfully theirs. As the human fleet prepared for the journey home, Admiral Morrison addressed his people one final time. They were no longer refugees fleeing into the darkness, but warriors returning to claim their inheritance. The galaxy had cast them out in fear, but fear would not save the aliens from the reckoning that was coming. Humanity had learned much during their long exile, and they were eager to share those lessons with their former oppressors. The first rays of New Terra's twin suns painted the sky in brilliant shades of orange and gold as the Zephyrian garrison began their morning routines. War Commander Thelmac reviewed the daily reports from his subordinates, finding nothing more threatening than the usual complaints about equipment failures and supply shortages. The alien officer had grown comfortable in his position as military governor of humanity's former jewel world, never imagining that the original builders were about to reclaim their creation. The energy readings appeared on the garrison's sensors like ghosts materializing from the void. Thelmac stared at the displays in confusion, as massive signatures suddenly appeared directly above the planet's primary military installations. The readings made no sense according to everything the Zephyrians knew about space travel. Ships simply could not appear from nowhere, yet the evidence was undeniable. A human fleet had somehow bypassed every detection grid and early warning system. Colonel Steve Rogers felt the familiar weight of combat gear as he checked his weapons one final time before the assault began. The human soldiers around him moved with quiet confidence, their faces showing none of the fear that had marked humanity's desperate flight 3 centuries earlier. These were the descendants of survivors, hardened by exile and equipped with technology that made them individually more dangerous than entire alien platoons. Major Linda Carter coordinated the air support from her position aboard the command ship, watching as human fighters prepared to demonstrate capabilities that no alien force had ever encountered. The sleek vessels carried weapons that could adapt their frequency and intensity in real time, making alien shields and armor nearly useless against sustained attack. More importantly, human pilots had trained in combat simulators that modeled every known alien fighter design and tactic. The first human assault ships decloaked simultaneously above 6 different military installations, their sudden appearance causing panic among the Zephyrian defenders. The aliens had grown accustomed to warfare conducted according to rigid protocols, with formal declarations and predictable battle lines. They had no experience fighting an enemy that appeared without warning and struck with overwhelming force before disappearing back into invisibility. Captain Ryan Johnson led his strike team through the ventilation systems of the planetary defense grid, moving like shadows through passages that human engineers had designed 3 centuries earlier. The aliens had never bothered to change the access codes or modify the internal structure, assuming that knowledge of such things had died with humanity's exile. Their arrogance would cost them dearly as human soldiers appeared in the heart of their most secure installations. Sergeant Mary Davis commanded the diversionary attack on the main spaceport, her forces engaging the enemy garrison in conventional ground combat, while Johnson's team completed their infiltration mission. The Zephyrian defenders fought bravely, but their tactics had been developed for battles against other alien species. They had no answer for human soldiers who combined individual initiative with seamless unit coordination. The humans moved through the alien defenses like water flowing around stones, adapting to obstacles and finding weaknesses that their enemies never knew existed. Where the Zephyrians expected frontal assaults, human forces used deception and misdirection. Where alien commanders anticipated predictable maneuvers, human tactics evolved in real time to exploit changing battlefield conditions. Admiral Morrison coordinated the space battle from the bridge of the New Horizon, his tactical displays showing the positions of both fleets in 3-dimensional holographic detail. The Zephyrian task force outnumbered the human vessels by nearly 3 to 1, but numbers meant little when the enemy could not effectively target their opponents. Human ships appeared and disappeared like phantoms, striking from unexpected angles before vanishing into the void. Commander Tony Mitchell's stealth destroyers materialized behind the alien battle line, their weapons targeting the engine systems of enemy capital ships. The Zephyrian vessels, built for straightforward slugging matches with other alien fleets, had no defense against attacks from multiple directions simultaneously. Their shields, designed to absorb energy from conventional weapons, proved nearly useless against human technology that could adjust its characteristics faster than defensive systems could adapt. Captain Sarah Blake commanded the heavy cruisers that formed the backbone of humanity's assault force, their massive guns capable of punching through alien armor like paper. The weapons had been designed during humanity's exile, built by automated factories that had 3 centuries to perfect their craft. Each shot was precisely calibrated to exploit weaknesses in alien hull materials and defensive systems. The battle demonstrated humanity's greatest tactical advantage, their ability to think creatively under pressure. When Zephyrian shields proved more resistant than expected, engineer Bill Parker quickly modified the fleet's weapon systems to cycle through multiple energy frequencies, overwhelming the alien defensive systems with constantly changing attacks. The modification was completed and distributed to the entire fleet in less than 20 minutes. Pilot Alex Turner developed new formation flying techniques during the battle itself, coordinating human fighters in patterns that maximize their defensive coverage while allowing concentrated attacks on high-value targets. The alien pilots, trained in rigid formations and predictable maneuvers, found themselves outmaneuvered by opponents who seemed to anticipate their every move while remaining completely unpredictable themselves. In the Zephyrian defenders fought with desperate courage as they realized they were facing an enemy unlike any they had encountered before. Their communication networks carried increasingly frantic reports of human forces that appeared without warning, struck with devastating effectiveness, and vanished before effective counterattacks could be mounted. The rigid command structure that had served them well in previous conflicts became a liability against opponents, who adapted faster than orders could be transmitted. War Commander. Thelmach watched his carefully planned defenses crumble as human forces demonstrated capabilities that seemed to violate the basic laws of warfare. His orbital platforms, positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire, were systematically destroyed by attacks that came from directions his designers had never considered possible. His ground forces, trained for conventional battles, found themselves fighting enemies who appeared and disappeared like ghosts. The battle for New Terra lasted 18 hours, but the outcome was decided within the first 6. The human assault had been planned with mathematical precision, taking advantage of every weakness in alien defenses, while exploiting technologies that the Zephyrians could not counter. When the surviving alien forces finally requested permission to withdraw, Admiral Morrison granted it without hesitation. He wanted survivors to carry word of humanity's return to the rest of the galaxy. As the last Zephyrian ships limped away from New Terra's orbit, they carried with them news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Humanity had returned from exile with technology and tactics that made them nearly unstoppable in battle. The species that the alien coalition had tried to exterminate was not only alive but stronger than ever before, and they showed no intention of forgetting the crimes committed against them 3 centuries earlier. The emergency session of the Galactic Confederation convened within hours of receiving the first reports from New Terra, but chaos had already begun spreading through the communication networks that connected thousands of worlds across the galaxy. High Chancellor Vextar found himself facing a crisis that challenged everything the alien coalition believed about their place in the universe. The species they had attempted to exterminate 3 centuries earlier had returned with technology and capabilities that made them appear almost invincible in battle. Admiral Morrison established his headquarters in the restored government complex of New Geneva, the same building where human colonial administrators had once governed New Terra with wisdom and efficiency. The structure had suffered from 3 centuries of alien neglect, but human engineers worked around the clock to restore its systems and upgrade them with technology developed during the long exile. The message was clear. Humanity had returned to stay. Chief of Staff Claire Davis coordinated the massive logistical operation required to establish permanent human presence on their reclaimed world. Thousands of humans emerged from cryogenic sleep daily, their skills desperately needed to repair the damage caused by centuries of alien mismanagement. Terraforming specialists worked to restore atmospheric processors, while agricultural experts began replanting the vast farming complexes that had once fed multiple star systems. The alien response came faster than Admiral Morrison had anticipated, but it lacked the coordination that might have made it effective. The Thrakari Empire dispatched their most powerful battle fleet under Admiral Kethvor, a warrior whose reputation for ruthless efficiency had been earned in a dozen previous conflicts. However, Kethvor had never faced opponents who refused to fight according to established conventions. The crystalline Vorthan contributed their energy-based weapons technology, hoping that their ability to channel stellar radiation into focused beams would prove effective against human defenses. The aquatic Nereids offered their stealth submarines, vessels designed for underwater operations that could theoretically operate undetected in the void of space. The insectoid Klaxons provided massive swarms of fighter craft, overwhelming enemies through sheer numbers rather than individual capability. Captain Dan Foster commanded the defense of the Kepler system, where human engineers had constructed a network of mobile platforms that could reconfigure their positions and defensive capabilities in real time. The platforms were connected by quantum communication links that allowed instantaneous coordination across vast distances, creating a defensive web that could adapt to any threat faster than enemy. Commanders could develop countermeasures. The alien coalition fleet that arrived at Kepler represented the largest military force assembled in 3 centuries, but size meant little against opponents who had spent their exile perfecting the art of asymmetric warfare. The aliens expected to find fixed defensive positions that could be overwhelmed through concentrated firepower. but instead encountered a defensive network that seemed to anticipate their every move while presenting no predictable targets. Colonel Kevin Stone led ground forces that coordinated seamlessly with orbital platforms and fighter squadrons, demonstrating the integrated approach to warfare that had made humanity dominant before their exile. Human soldiers could call down precision strikes from space-based weapons, while fighter pilots provided close air support, guided by real-time intelligence from ground observers. The aliens, accustomed to species that specialized in single forms of combat, found themselves facing enemies who excelled at every aspect of warfare simultaneously. Commander Julia Adams operated the orbital defense platforms with an efficiency that amazed even her human colleagues. The platforms could shift their positions within minutes, changing from long-range artillery batteries to point defense systems as tactical requirements changed. Their weapons could be reconfigured to fire different types of ammunition or energy beams, making it nearly impossible for alien forces to develop effective countermeasures. Captain Matt Collins commanded fighter squadrons equipped with artificial intelligence systems that could process battlefield information faster than biological brains could comprehend. The AI systems did not replace human judgment but enhanced it, providing pilots with tactical options and threat assessments that allowed them to make better decisions in the chaos of combat. The result was a level of situational awareness that no alien pilot could match. Throughout former human space, resistance cells that had remained hidden for 3 centuries suddenly emerged to strike at alien supply lines and communication networks. Marcus Wright coordinated sabotage operations from his base in the ruins of Chicago Station, while Diana Cooper led attacks on alien shipping that disrupted trade routes throughout the sector. The galaxy faced not just an invasion but a coordinated uprising of humans who had never accepted alien rule. The Battle of Kepler Station became a disaster for the alien coalition as their conventional tactics proved useless. Against human innovation and adaptability, Admiral Kethfor watched his carefully planned assault dissolve into chaos as human defenders appeared where they should not have been able to survive and struck from directions that his strategists had deemed impossible. The Thrakari Admiral had conquered a dozen worlds, but he had never faced enemies who seemed to rewrite the rules of warfare in real time. The Vorton energy weapons, so effective against conventional shields and armor, proved nearly useless against human defensive systems that could analyze incoming attacks and adjust their parameters faster than the weapons could be retargeted. The Nereid stealth submarines found themselves detected and destroyed by sensors that operated on principles their designers had never encountered. The Klaxon fighter swarms were decimated by human pilots who treated numerical superiority as just another tactical problem to be solved. For the first time in 3 centuries, multiple alien species were forced to retreat from human forces, their fleets battered and their confidence shattered. The psychological impact of defeat rippled through galactic civilization, as species that had considered themselves inherently superior to humans faced the reality of their own inadequacy. The comfortable assumptions that had governed alien thinking since humanity's exile were crumbling along with their military formations. Admiral Morrison broadcast his ultimatum to the entire galaxy from the bridge of the New Horizon, his words carried by communication networks that had once served human civilization. Humanity demanded the unconditional return of all former human territories and reparations for 3 centuries of suffering and exile. The galaxy had 48 hours to respond before humanity would take by force what should have been returned freely. The ultimatum divided the Galactic Confederation as never before, with some species recognizing the inevitable, while others prepared for a final, desperate battle. The progressive factions understood that humanity's technological superiority made further resistance futile, but the militarist factions refused to accept defeat at the hands of a species they had once driven from the galaxy. The stage was set for a final confrontation that would determine the future of galactic civilization. As Admiral Morrison concluded his broadcast, he reflected on how far humanity had come since those dark days when they had fled into exile. They had not merely survived in the cold depths of space. They had grown stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before. The galaxy that had cast them out in fear was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength had never been their technology or their weapons, but their refusal to surrender in the face of impossible odds. The galaxy's response to humanity's ultimatum split the Confederation down the middle, with some species finally recognizing the futility of resistance while others prepared for what they believed would be their final battle against the returning humans. The scholarly ethereals, who had always valued knowledge above conquest, quietly opened diplomatic channels with Admiral Morrison. The peaceful Verdani, whose plant-like biology made them natural environmentalists, offered to return the human agricultural worlds they had been unable to properly maintain. Admiral Morrison coordinated humanity's final campaign from the Bridge of the Endeavor, a massive command vessel that had been constructed from resources liberated during their reconquest of former human territory. The ship represented everything humanity had learned during their long exile: advanced manufacturing capabilities, research laboratories that continued developing new technologies even during battle, and defensive systems that could adapt to any threat the galaxy might produce. General Patricia Young commanded the multi-pronged assault that would either end the conflict through negotiation or crush the remaining resistance through superior firepower. Her strategy demonstrated how much humanity had evolved during their exile, offering protection and partnership to species willing to abandon the Confederation, while showing no mercy to those who continued to support genocide and oppression. The ethereals became the first non-human species to formally ally with returning humanity, their decision based on careful analysis of human technological capabilities and cultural values. The gaseous beings had spent centuries studying the ruins of human civilization, trying to understand how a single species had achieved so much in such a short time. Their conclusion was that humanity represented the galaxy's best hope for progress and enlightenment. Captain Rob Turner led the assault ships that approached Galactic Center Station, the massive structure that had served as the Confederation's seat of power for 3 centuries. The station had been built using human engineering principles and construction techniques, making it both a symbol of alien authority and a testament to human ingenuity. Turner's forces prepared to reclaim the greatest engineering achievement in galactic history. High Chancellor Vextar commanded the last great alien fleet from the station's central command center, his forces representing the final military strength of species that refused to accept the new reality. The Zephyrian leader had spent his entire life believing in alien superiority over humans, and he could not accept that his worldview had been built on lies and self-deception. Dr. Nancy Bell worked with technical teams that had studied the station's original blueprints, documents that had been preserved in human databases throughout the long exile. The aliens had made numerous modifications over the centuries, but they had never understood the fundamental principles that made the station's systems work. Their changes had actually made the structure more vulnerable to attack by anyone who understood its original design. The Capcut, decisive battle for Galactic Center Station began with human forces demonstrating their mastery of combined operations. Turner's assault ships disabled the station's primary weapons, while Bell's teams infiltrated the computer networks, using backdoors and access codes that the original human designers had hidden in the system architecture. The irony was not lost on human forces. They were defeating their enemies using the very technology that aliens had stolen from them. The battle showcased humanity's greatest strategic achievement, their ability to unite former enemies in common cause. Ethereal vessels fought alongside human ships, their energy manipulation abilities complementing human weapons technology. Former alien slaves and oppressed populations joined human crews, creating a level of interspecies cooperation that the galaxy had never witnessed under Confederation rule. Human allied forces included not just the ethereals, but also reformed Verdani agricultural specialists, aquatic Nereid engineers who had grown tired of their leaders' corruption, and even some Thrakari warriors who respected strength above political loyalty. Admiral Morrison had proven that humanity's vision of galactic civilization was superior to the rigid hierarchies that had dominated for 3 centuries. High Chancellor Vextar watched his defenses crumble as human forces demonstrated capabilities that seemed to violate everything he thought he knew about warfare and technology. The station's own systems turned against him as human hackers gained control of life support, artificial gravity, and communication networks. His carefully planned last stand became a humiliating surrender as his own weapons powered down under human control. The fall of Galactic Center Station marked the end of the Confederation's authority and the beginning of a new era in galactic history. Admiral Morrison demonstrated humanity's evolution by offering mercy to defeated enemies, showing that 3 centuries of exile had taught humans the value of justice over revenge. The species that had tried to commit genocide would face consequences, but those consequences would be legal and proportionate, rather than vindictive. President Jennifer Brooks addressed the new Galactic Alliance from Earth's restored capital, the blue planet once again serving as the center of human civilization and a beacon of hope for the entire galaxy. Her speech was broadcast to billions of beings across thousands of worlds, marking the first time in 3 centuries that Earth's voice had been heard among the stars. The establishment of the human-led Galactic Alliance created opportunities for cooperation and progress that had been impossible under the old system. Species that embraced equality and mutual respect found themselves welcomed as full partners, while those that clung to supremacist ideologies faced isolation and irrelevance. Humanity had not conquered the galaxy so much as liberated it from its own limitations. The transformation of galactic civilization proceeded rapidly as human administrators worked with allied species to repair 3 centuries of damage and neglect. Ancient terraforming projects were restored and improved. Trade routes were reopened under fair and equal terms, and technological development resumed at a pace not seen since humanity's original expansion into space. The final scene of humanity's return played out in the parks and schools of New Geneva, where human children played alongside young aliens while their parents worked together to build a better future for all species. The sight would have been impossible under the old Confederation, where rigid hierarchies kept species separated and suspicious of each other. Engineer Carlos Martinez worked with ethereal scientists to develop new propulsion systems that would make interstellar travel faster and more efficient. Dr. Rachel Stone collaborated with Verdani biologists to create medical treatments that worked across species barriers. General Pete Collins trained mixed units of human and alien soldiers who would defend the new alliance against any threats that might emerge from the galaxy's unexplored regions. Admiral Morrison reflected on humanity's journey from the bridge of the new horizon as Earth grew larger in the forward view screen. 3 centuries earlier, his species had fled into the darkness as refugees, cast out by beings who feared what humans might become. Now they had returned not as conquerors seeking revenge, but as leaders offering a vision of what galactic civilization could achieve when all species worked together. The galaxy had tried to stop humanity through genocide and exile, but they had failed to understand that humans drew strength from adversity rather than being weakened by it. The long exile had not broken human spirit but refined it, teaching lessons about perseverance, innovation, and the value of cooperation that no classroom could have provided. Humanity had returned to the stars not just to reclaim their inheritance, but to share the wisdom they had gained in the darkness with all who were willing to learn.